Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about LinkedIn, and specifically we're going to talk about what makes for a strong LinkedIn personal profile. This is your foundation and your cornerstone to any LinkedIn marketing that you may do, is getting this page in order first, and then you move on from there. My name is Jasmine Holmes. I am the owner of 910 West, a digital marketing company located in Gilbert, Arizona. And today I'm joined by Kitty Carlisle, who is our content manager here at 910 West, but she also has her own business, The Grammatical Activist. I'm going to give Kitty a minute to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kitty, and I'm a writer and editor, and I do contract work and freelance work. And part of my freelance work, and actually as part of some of my contract work, I help people optimize and completely fill out their LinkedIn profiles so that they can either find a job or just improve their network capabilities in the professional world.
And that's something that we've done. Kitty and I have done this presentation several times with several of our clients. So not necessarily that they want their salespeople to be out there looking for new jobs, but for how they can modify their profiles to improve that network visibility. And so there can be a lot of goals in why you might want to use LinkedIn. One of the most obvious and well-known is job searching, and it's an awesome tool to be found as well as to find potential employees or contractors. But it's also an excellent tool for promoting yourself or your business. And that's going to be the focus of our conversation today, is that aspect and how the personal profile falls into that. We're going to start and just work our way from the top down of the profile. I'm going to give high level of the sections, and then Kitty will jump in with her expertise and offer the real details and specifics. So let's just go ahead and get started with the top here. We're looking at Kitty's profile. She's our example. And you'll see she's got two really nice photos here up at the top of her profile. That long rectangular one, that's your banner image, and that can really be anything you like. In the case of somebody who is self-employed or a small business owner, you may have that be something to just kind of show off your personality. So Kitty's case, she's got a beautiful picture of the view she sees outside her office window. Mine's something a little bit more, I like a little bit more conceptual. So I've got a hot air balloon. It could also be something related to your business if you have a business. So it could be perhaps a similar, maybe you've got your logo in there, or some kind of a pattern or something that carries across other elements in your design. So it's really free form. Then you've got your profile photo. That's the headshot you see there. And it's important to note that that should be up to date and a professional headshot, not a selfie. Kitty, I'm going to let you kind of offer some more suggestions on both those images.
Okay, for that banner image, I do want to state that a lot of people choose a quote, which is great, especially myself as a word person. I'm really big on quotes. And what you want to do is be really aware of whatever image or verbiage you choose for that banner image doesn't get obscured by your profile image and create a message that's not being communicated well. So that profile picture actually is in the center when you're on a mobile device. Yeah. And it could be right smack dab in the center of whatever message you're trying to get across, if it's words or an image. So just be mindful of that.
That's an excellent point. We see that a lot with those images on LinkedIn, where it's a little tricky on how they do positioning. So we do try to keep those really simple in general, just because the photo, like you said, your profile photo moves around and covers different parts of it, as well as it'll get blown up big in some views of the profile. So it definitely, as simple is better there. Don't get too creative, because you may not, like you said, can be conveying the message you intend.
Right, and at some point we'll talk about how to, if you want to unpublish your page while you're working on it, especially if you're doing a lot of work. And what I would suggest with the images is maybe unpublish your page just while you're messing around with images to see how it looks on your phone or a tablet as well as on your desktop, until you get the images that you want, both of those. And as far as the profile picture, Jasmine already mentioned, of course, not having a selfie. That's really important. The up-to-date picture, nothing older than 2 years, and ideally, of course, you'd want to update that at least once a year. And it should not be your whole face. So your face actually should take up about 2/3 of that circle, and no more and no less. And you should be professionally dressed, but it really also depends on what kind of business you're in. So you don't necessarily have to wear a suit and tie if that's not what you normally wear, but you also don't want to be, you know, in scuba diving equipment either. So unless you're a scuba diver certification person, so that's an option as well. But really, you want a professional headshot there.
And
Okay.
professionally dressed as is appropriate to your profession, I think. So yeah, like we're in marketing, so we, you know, we it's a little bit more business casual. Whereas if you were maybe a financial advisor or a you know, C-level executive, you may want to have that more buttoned-up suit and tie look, because that would be more appropriate to your level in your career.
Exactly.
Underneath that, you'll see we've got Kitty's name. That little first you see there actually shows how she and I are connected. So when you're looking at somebody else's profile, that'll show how you're connected to them. So if they're a second or a third, meaning there's somebody in between that you know would be a second connection, or a third, a friend of a friend kind of thing. It'll give you that idea. More importantly, underneath that is where you see the headline or the title for your LinkedIn profile. If you are part of a larger company, this will probably just be your title within the company. That generally is how they prefer to list those, because it just makes a little bit more sense in terms of they've got a little bit more set structure. However, if you're self-employed or a small business person like Kitty and myself, you can definitely use this to get creative, particularly if you're looking to use your profile as a marketing tool to attract people to you. So you can see here, Kitty's got a very creative headline she's used.
Right, that's my tagline. But just as Jasmine said, if you're a project manager at a large company, you might just want to put that there. So it really depends on not only your personality, but the company that you're working for. So
Yep.
just keep that in mind too. Don't get too creative, because people are going to still need to know what it is that you do.
Yes, yes. And that is a good point. So you'll see where Kitty's got her tagline at the front, and then the separator, and then she's got her actual sort of what she does, the writer and the editor. I did something similar on mine, where I've got a little bit of my brand promise, how I'm going to help you. And then I, again, kind of go into the more just typical terms of how you talk about the kind of work that I do as well. Lastly to note, are you able to hide the area, or does that show by default Kitty on there?
Which area? What do you mean?
Your location right there.
Well, LinkedIn does require that you put something there, so you can make it more general.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly if you can leave that out. I don't believe so, but LinkedIn does make changes all the time, so it is possible that it is now an option, but it didn't used to be.
So that's
So
yeah.
you don't have to put necessarily the exact city, because I don't actually live in Phoenix, but I am in the metro area. And actually, because of the type of work I do, as well as Jasmine, I don't have to, I can be anywhere. I've helped people even in other countries. So it does help as far as networking and connecting with people, but that is a personal choice as well.
Just depending on again, the nature of your business and your goals with LinkedIn as to how you would want to list that location. So in our case, because we're primarily working with companies in the Phoenix area, that's what we list on our profiles to let people know that we're not just limited to the cities we live in the metro, but we work with everybody throughout Phoenix. But perhaps if you were a little bit more limited, you might do that. Or if you had a broader base, you might expand that out a little bit.
Right.
Now you've got and here I'm going to shorten this up a little bit, and then we'll show it again. Your intro here, and I'm blanking on the correct
summary.
name.
It's a summary.
Your summary, and you just go ahead and talk to us a little bit about what should be in this summary, and I'm going to expand it so they can view yours in a little bit more detail as we walk through it.
Okay, now mine is a little bit longer, so it does not have to be this long at all. You do want a nice sized paragraph at least, so at least a few sentences. So maybe even just the section that's under allow me to help you. That's a big enough section for most people. So it really depends on what you do. But this is an excellent area. In fact, the best area for you to put in a narrative what it is you do, utilizing the keywords that are going to be used to help people find you when they're searching LinkedIn, either to connect with you or to find somebody to hire to do the job that you do. So you can see that I have it in a narrative, but under that special skill set that Jasmine had highlighted just a second ago, I just straight out have my keywords. But you can see because of the narrative, I do have them sprinkled throughout. So things that I'm known for, what I love to do. This is how people find me when they're want someone to write something or edit something for them. All those types of things should be in there. And then just scroll down a tiny bit there, Jasmine. Here is also where you want to put your contact information. There is a place at the top, and we'll go back up to that as soon as we're done with the summary. So again, my name right there, and what it is I do, the freelance writer, all that, those are all keywords. My direct email, instead of just messaging me through LinkedIn. I happen to have a website, so if you have a website, you want to put that in there, and a Facebook page for my business. So I've included those URLs. So you should think about including either perhaps your team page at your company, if that leads people back to you, or if you happen to have your own website, that type of thing. I don't usually suggest people put their phone number in there just because of spam calls, but that is a personal choice if you want to include that in there. Now, as far as this information, if you want to scroll back up to the profile part, Jasmine, you can see on the right here where it says see contact info. And that's also where you can put this information as well. But some people don't know to click on that. And so that's why you should always include it in your summary. So I don't necessarily have all that information in there, but I do have this information. Now, an important part I'd like to point out is that LinkedIn wants to know your birthday. And this is a place where your birthday will be, unless you have chosen, which I highly suggest, that you hide it from public view. So they use it in their demographics for whatever reason, and they do require you to include your birthday. But if you don't hide it from public view, everybody's going to know when your birthday is. And to me, that just doesn't seem very professional, because everybody's going to say, in other words, there will be a notification in all your contacts, news feeds. It's, Kitty's birthday. Wish her happy birthday. And I always feel like people are thinking, what, does she want a piece of cake or something? I mean, this isn't, you know how you're in an office and everybody has to chip in for that dreaded every month kind of thing. So again, it's a personal choice, but I don't see it as very professional. You do have to you do have to enter it, but there is a place for you to hide that information when you're setting up your account or you're editing your account.
And that's under the settings and privacy, correct? Where
I believe so, right.
Changes, which to note, so there is the public version of your profile, which this is my public profile, and there are some settings you can control here in terms of what the public sees on your profile, but this is by and far away not everything that you can control. And that's why I wanted to mention that there was a difference between this and the privacy and settings I mentioned a second ago. So you have much more control in that first option. This just allows you to adjust what people see on your public profile. So if they're not logged into LinkedIn, or they're not connected to you, this can control what they see. And you'll see here, somehow I had managed to not show my photo, which I am good with. So I'm going to go ahead and change that over to public. And now it's made my photo publicly available. So this, yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, stay there for just a second. Where it says on the right, your profile's public visibility and how she has it on, down, Jasmine.
Yep.
So to the right there near the top, right above where your cursor is. What where it says your profile. There you go. So this is what I was saying earlier. If you're going to mess around with your images, or if you're making a lot of major changes to your profile, just slide that to off while you're making all those changes. Otherwise, every single comma you change in your profile, besides a few select sections, will be published on all your contacts news feeds. So it's just easier to just switch that to off while you're making a whole bunch of changes, images or adding content, whatever it is you're doing. And then just remember to slide it back to on when you're done.
I lost my picture again. All right, let's turn that back on. And the other thing I wanted to note on this screen, so one of the things that's important is to customize your URL, because otherwise you'll get kind of a long one with some letters and numbers in there. And so this can be a great way, particularly if you're going to be promoting your LinkedIn URL, this is something you definitely want to customize and get it to be as short and concise and close to your name as possible. And so that's where you can, this is the view where you would go in and be able to edit that URL to make this easy to share with folks as well.
Right. LinkedIn gives you the default of having it just like this, and then there's a slash after your name with a whole bunch of numbers. So what you ideally want to do is get rid of all those numbers. However, if you happen to have a common name, there's likely to, of course, be someone else, and LinkedIn will give you some suggestions for that URL. So you might want to include your middle initial, or if you have an MBA, a lot of people include their degree after that. So an MBA rather, or PhD, something like that. But again, LinkedIn will give you some suggestions, so you can choose that. But that's a really important part, that URL. It just streamlines your professional URL, because you might be including that on your resume or at the bottom, in your signature of your email, that type of thing. It just looks more professional.
Yep. And then lastly, in this section, let's talk about number of connections.
Right. In order to achieve a superstar status, according to LinkedIn, you should have at least 500 connections. That would be the minimum. And so you just want to start, connecting with people that you meet at meetings or at networking events or new clients. A lot of times what I do is, if I'm reading an article and I really enjoy the content or find it very moving, I'll reach out through LinkedIn to see if that author is on LinkedIn, and I'll send them a note and try to connect with them. So that would be another thing, is that Jasmine and I are already connected, so it's not going to show this, but under that more button under my profile picture, it should have, if you're not next to message yet, if we were not connected, it would say, where it says remove connection, it would say connect. And so when you click on that connect, it's going to take you to another screen that says add a note or send connection. You always want to add a note just to personalize that connection request, and just say something like, I read this article that you wrote, I find it very interesting, or whatever you want to say about it, or how you met them. But you should personalize it in some way. It can just be a sentence, but you want to make sure that they know that you're not just willy-nilly sending out connection requests to anybody.
And what I will say too is, hold off on sending connection requests until you get your profile up into shape. I will pretty much on LinkedIn accept anybody's connection request, with the exception of, if you do not have a profile photo, I will not accept you, because I want to make sure you're a legit person. And if you're not willing to share your face, that to me is a little questionable. So that's something that, where the more complete and professional your profile looks, the more likely somebody is going to be to accept your connection request if they're don't directly know you as well.
That's a good point about the picture, except that if you don't have that picture set to public, or to, it could be set to LinkedIn members, in which case anybody who's on LinkedIn is going to see your picture. But if it's only set at your connections being able to see your picture, then sending out a connection request to someone who is obviously not connected to you, they're not going to see your profile picture. So that would be another reason to choose to have your your profile picture available for others to see. So keep those kinds of things in mind.
Yeah, at least for all LinkedIn members. Yeah, because I think particularly if you're going to be reaching out to, those third level connections, or people you don't have any connection to, I think having that photo on there is an important piece. Because again, it shows that you're legit. You're not somebody spammy or just kind of setting up an account trying to, get connections with people to sell them stuff. So I think there's a level of trust that comes from having that photo be available when you see somebody.
Right, and I have chosen not to accept every single contact request that comes through, because sometimes people might have 16 connections, possibly no profile picture. The rest of their profile seems a little questionable, and they have not included any kind of a personal note. Now that said, if they have very few connections, but I've been one of the people who have helped them create that LinkedIn profile, then of course I would be connecting with them. So just somebody out of the blue, though, sending me a connection request with very few connections, no profile picture, not a fully filled out profile, I generally do not. I've made the decision to not connect with them. So that is a personal decision on your part as well. Yep. Just also remember, I have a lot of clients who say that they only feel that they should connect with people within their same industry, and that is a mistake. You do want to connect with people that not necessarily could help you, but with whom you might have some kind of professional interest. So it doesn't have to be somebody who's within the same industry or field.
Gotcha. That's a great tip. So we're going to move on to this endorsement section. And so Kitty, why don't you give us the 30,000 foot view on what endorsements are and how they work?
Yes, endorsements are endorsements of skills, which are a little bit further down in the profile. But your skills are all those things, all those keywords that I mentioned in the summary. So for me, of course, writing, editing, and variations of those words, as well as blogging, SEO, LinkedIn, all kinds of different words. And we'll get to that whole section in a few minutes. But anytime that you see a contact where they have those skills listed and you think to yourself, wow, they actually do that really well, or I've seen their work and I can definitely say, yes, I endorse this skill, I know that they do it well, then all you would do is be clicking on the endorsement right next to that skill. In fact, Jasmine, if you want to scroll down to that skills section just really quick, we can go over it later in more detail, but just so they see where the check mark is next to copy editing at the top there under skills and endorsements. That just means that Jasmine has already endorsed me for that skill. And I've been endorsed by 22 people for web content and 51 people for copy editing. 45 people have endorsed me for editing. Now, here's the other thing, and of course, we'll get into this in more detail, but these top three, you can choose which ones are going to be at the top three. Yep. So default through LinkedIn is whatever you add first is going to be up there, and then whoever starts endorsing you, those move to the top. But we'll show you in a few minutes how you can actually move those to the top so that those get viewed more frequently. Yeah. Because again, this is the second place in your LinkedIn profile where those keywords come into play. So these are all keywords by themselves instead of just what you've added in your summary. But this is a really, really important section.
So you'd want to make sure that the skills you have showing up here match what's those keywords in your summary. And we'll talk, like I said, we'll talk in detail about how to use this section, but the one caution I will throw out is, particularly if you're newer to LinkedIn and you haven't filled out your skills, what we see a lot of is it'll kind of pop stuff up for people in their feed, just like you saw where it popped up for Kitty earlier. And LinkedIn doesn't always pick the skills that you would necessarily want to highlight. And so people will endorse you for stuff that's really maybe not your strength. Maybe they worked with you in that capacity, but that's not what you're doing now. And so that's another reason why taking control of those skills and the endorsements will help to filter out and really make sure that what you want to be shown and to be endorsed for, what's most important to what you're doing right now and your goal with LinkedIn, is what's being highlighted.
Right, because you can remove those skills if there's skills you don't want on your profile.
Yep. So then let's move into, so these two sections here are more just talking about, and so in this case, because I'm looking at Kitty's profile, mine will look a little different because I won't have that same section. It's going to more show what I'm doing with my dashboard and my activity. When looking at somebody else's profile, it's going to show who you guys know in common. So that can be a great way if you're trying to connect with somebody, as well as their recent activity. So this is going to be helpful to see kind of what they've been up to as well. So if you're going to reach out to somebody, this might be a great place to look before you send that personalized connection request to see what they've been up to. But let's move into this experience section and talk about this, because this is really the heart of the profile in a lot of ways. And it's like your resume on steroids.
Exactly. That's what I always tell my clients. So you use your resume as a foundation to set up your LinkedIn profile. But of course, with the resume, you don't want it more than 2 pages max. And your LinkedIn profile, you can include all kinds of information that you can't on your resume. Excuse me. So it's just going to be the same kind of information chronologically that you would have on your resume. So, but again, you can utilize those keywords within your information, the details of your positions. And there's no one right way to either do a resume or a LinkedIn profile. And you can see with my personal business, Grammatical Activist, I have it in a loose narrative where I kind of introduce what I do as well as include all those keywords. But what I do for 910 West, I have, you want to click on the See More for 910 West, Jasmine?
Yep.
Up next to copy editing under 910 West.
Oh, that one too. Oh.
Yeah. So on this one, I chose to I don't have a narrative. I just have all my keywords and all the things that I do for 910 West. So you can see you can have it either way. It doesn't matter. Just don't make it super long. And then you can see where I have this in each of these two positions in particular. I have I've done a couple of trainings with Jasmine for citations, business citations, and businesses online reviews. And so those are actually links to YouTube videos that we've done that I've been in charge of. And then scrolling back up, I have included a link to media. And so that's just a newspaper article. And I have several, but LinkedIn only allows you to upload, certain things. But again, LinkedIn is always changing. So you can look to see what it will allow you to upload. And that way people can see a little bit more of actual examples of what you've done and what you do. This is a great place where if you are a presenter or you often are in charge of training and there's video of that, you can include that in here. I think it's a really important addition, and again, something you cannot possibly include in a resume.
And you can do creative work, so like you're a graphic
Right.
designer or doing something visual, it's a great place to include samples of your work as well.
Absolutely. And so you can see where this particular position, the contract blog writer, it's just different ways to include all the information that I've done in a narrative with keywords.
So what sorts of information, what sort of details would we want to see? Which I know this is the part where for this section, your experience section, this is where in a lot of cases it does make sense to have a professional help you with getting this together. But what's some tips as far as like what sort of information they should include about the positions and what sort of positions they should include in here?
Well, you should definitely include positions that are that you've done, obviously, that you've been a part of or that you're presently a part of. But you also want to highlight the information that you use to detail your job. You want to highlight things that those skills that you really want to let people know that that's what you're doing or that you want to do, especially if you're in between jobs. So you can use those keywords in a way that let people know what you do. Although I don't include it in my experience, one really important thing to put in there, depending on the job that you have or have had, are statements that list statistics. So if you've increased production by 74%, or you've managed to make the company some, a great deal of money, or you've trimmed down expenses. Those are excellent, excellent things that should absolutely be included in your LinkedIn profile. And that's actually something you can pick and choose from the different positions and include in your summary as well at the very top. So just as like highlights, I don't really have those kind of statistics with what I do for the most part. But yeah, in the summary at the top, that's a great place. You could have just a whole paragraph, putting in there all of those stats as like 3 or 4 bullet points, something like that. Again, it does not have to be very long, but just including that information. People like to see numbers, and including that information is going to let people know, wow, this person really gets stuff done, and here are the quantifiable figures to prove that she's done what we need her to do, or that's going to make me become her client, or that I'm going to hire her to do that type of thing.
So how far would you want to go back in your job history, and what positions would you maybe not want to show? That might not be,
because I work with a lot of people who are either underemployed or unemployed. I see a lot of like really temporary jobs. And so I wouldn't necessarily include those as individual positions if they were under a year. It's going to depend on each particular person. But if it's in the same industry, then it can be good. It can still be a good thing because you're expanding your skills, and at least there shows no gaps in employment. Although if there are gaps in employment, you can always put in there what it is you've been doing. Perhaps you've been consulting during that time, or furthering your education, taking some classes to get certified in something so that you can get a better job or change careers, that type of thing. You want to show movement. You want to show activity throughout your career. So the positions should definitely highlight what it is that you want to do. So in other words, if you started out 25 years ago just answering phones, you're not going to necessarily want to include that kind of information on your resume or your LinkedIn profile. However, some of the skills that you learned during that time are probably still being used with whatever it is you're doing now. So especially if you have to do anything with technology, maybe not necessarily going back 25 years, but maybe from 10 years ago, it's a job you don't necessarily want to include, but those skills are still there. So you can include the skills in some of your current work or in that skills and endorsements section as well.
So let's move on to the education section. This one's can be a bit of a, it can be a bit, throw people a little bit for a loop. So let's talk about what should be in this section and how you would want to list the different institutions.
Okay, so if the college or university or whatever kind of organization has a LinkedIn profile company page, if you will, or school page, as NAU does on LinkedIn, you're going to see that little icon to the left of the name. So if they do not, like maybe it's a smaller school or something like that, it is possible that they would not have a company page. So that
community college, there we go.
Right. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't include it. It just means that's the difference between having a logo there and not. So just be aware of that. So that's not a big deal. It's just a difference. The important thing, of course, is to make sure that you have the name, obviously, of the institution. You can put in what your degree is. LinkedIn gives you the drop downs for you to add all this information. And you don't necessarily have to put in your GPA. I just happen to be pretty proud of being a first-generation college student and graduating with a 4.0. So I included that. Plus, some of the academia work I've done, they require that kind of information. So I figure, why not include it? It's always really good to include any kind of activities or societies you've joined when you've been in college at any level, as well as any additional extracurricular work, especially if it shows management or leadership, self-motivation, that type of thing. So if you, just organize some really big community event, you can include that in there too. Again, LinkedIn does give you that little text box in there too, when you're adding your education, to put in there. One of the most important things, however, that I would like to add that should not be in this section is anything that's older than 5 years. So you can include the institution and all this information, just not the years.
Oh, okay.
So if I had just graduated NAU last year or 5 years ago, I would still include the date of that, but it's been just over that for me because I went to college a little bit later. So I have taken out those years. And also, if you want to show one more education, click on that, Jasmine. I'm not going back to high school. So I do have my associates in here as well as my bachelor's and my, the rest of my degrees in here. And some people have included their high school information. And
mine's on there. I don't know
yeah.
why on there, but
it's not necessarily a bad thing. I've made it a personal choice not to put it on there. But you can see with Jasmine's, she was in Phi Theta Kappa and working on the newspaper. So that's actually a good thing. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to leave it off. But also, especially if you're going to join certain groups, which of course we haven't gotten to that section yet, there may be groups or other discussions that have to do with the high school that you graduated from. So it's really important for you to just think about whether you want to include that information or not. Including it or excluding it is neither right nor wrong. It's a personal decision. Just don't put the years in any of that if any of the years are older than 5 years. So just keep that in mind.
Let's talk about the volunteer experience, because that's a little bit different way to present your skills and highlight other what you do.
Right, and I kind of alluded to including some of this type of information as far as community activity in your education. So you can include some of this if you were doing any of these things while you were at a particular university, but go into more depth in this particular section. So this is where it's going to show, you can absolutely include the years here, even if it went farther back. Now, I actually started volunteering when I was in, I think, 5th grade. I do not include that because it was so long ago. So anything that I have volunteered as an adult, I have included. And some of these I don't have as much information in there as I should, as more of the more current ones, the more current volunteer positions that I hold. But it does show that you're an active member of the community, that you care about other things. You never know what's going to be a talking point with someone, either a hiring agent or your next connection or your next client. Yep. Somebody may come to you to have you do their digital marketing because they see that you are a volunteer with Arizona State Parks and Trails. You don't know what that connection is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's always good to highlight other aspects of your personality. We're not all work, we're not all career. So what do you do for fun? And because you just never know when that's going to, like you said, make a connection with somebody who that they've got a similar interest. And particularly if you're using LinkedIn for marketing to attract, clients, I think it's a great way for you guys to find some common ground as well. But certainly that community aspect is also huge, showing that you're a good citizen and you're supporting and kind of what you do for that. That always makes people feel really good. And we want to do business with people that are helping other people. So absolutely very important.
Right. Exactly. So you want to include that information.
Yep. Now,
go ahead.
I was going to say, are we ready to move on to skills and endorsements?
Yeah, and we did, of course, touch on this, but can you pop over to yours really quick, Jasmine, and go into the add a skill section? Yeah. Okay. So you want to. This is obviously how you add a skill, and so what you can do is start. If you already know your keywords, just start adding them. Okay. But if you start even typing in a word such as organizational, but don't finish typing the word, you can see this drop-down menu where it's going to give you about a dozen choices. And of course, this is going to go for any number of words. and then you can choose from here. So if you're at at your wit's end, or thinking, oh, what else can I add? Because there are 50 skills that you can add, and you should choose 50 skills. And you can change those, but you should have 50 skills because of those keywords. Remember, this is the second best section for keywords. And once you have those in there, you can see how they're broken down by the different sections: industry knowledge, tools and technology, interpersonal skills, and whatnot. And it's just going to show people, again, what your interests are, but also what your professional skills are. And this is where you would come in, and you would be endorsing other people if you go to look at their particular skills. So all Jasmine would have to do is click on one of those pluses and see now that it's a check mark. That means she has endorsed me for that particular skill. Thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah, I've been demonstrating, and you'll see as I click, the number goes up. But that'll help that'll help when people are searching. The more endorsements you have on a keyword, there's going to be some weight that's going to go into how LinkedIn shows those the search results as well, particularly if you're not already connected. So having your key skills listed and then having endorsements for those, particularly if you want this as a marketing tool to attract leads, is going to be a very critical piece of that.
And if you could pop up back over to yours, Jasmine, I want to show you how you can easily just click on the pencil. You can move those skills in whatever position you want. Now, we talked about those top 3. So in order to remove one of those top 3, you would actually click on that blue. You have to click on one to remove it first.
All right.
So of course you don't have to, but as long as we remember where to put it back in.
No, and actually I just realized I actually want to update this. So there we go.
Okay. So there we go. So then you're just going to grab that, those lines to the side there, that hamburger, and move them in whatever position you want. And that's how they'll show up. They'll still be in those particular sections like industry knowledge and all those different sections we just went over. But in order to put those top 3, that's what you have to do. You have to get one of them out of there first. So you just click on the blue pin and then go down and put whatever one you want back in, and then move those in the order that you want. Okay, and then just don't forget to save that blue button at the bottom once you're done moving all those around. So now she has the top 3 skills that she wants, and that's what's going to show to everybody until they hit that see more button. So this is how they're in this particular order. No matter how many people have endorsed her, she has them in the order that she wants. Yep. And again, you can change that. And as we kind of touched on earlier, if somebody has endorsed you for a particular skill, let's say telephone usage or something a little archaic or that you don't really want on there, just because weird stuff pops up on the kind of social media platforms anyway, you can actually go back into edit your skills and then just remove it. It gives you the option. It had that little trash can next to those lines, right, and you just click on the trash can to get rid of that particular skill.
Like, for instance, I think a lot of people assume just because you do one thing, you do everything. Like, so I do digital marketing, so this search advertising will show up, which really isn't a specialty of mine. So this is something that I might go in and take that out and replace it. And then the other thing is you do want to review these from time to time, because if you're always adding new skills and learning, then this may be something that needs to change as you grow and take your skills and your work in a different direction as well.
Right. And if you happen to be a person who doesn't have a lot of professional experience yet, so if you're new, maybe you've just graduated college or you've been in the same industry for many, many years and now you're changing your field, those are good times to look at those skills and maybe change them around, remove some, put new ones in, that kind of thing.
Perfect. Let's move on to recommendations.
Right. A lot of people get these 2 sections confuse the
Yes.
skills and endorsements and the recommendations, and they are two separate things. So as we talked about with the skills, those are all keywords. They're really important, very, very important for people searching for you. Recommendations are important just so that people can see, have people liked what you've done with and for them, and have you liked and done what you've, done and for them as well. So now the tricky part is here where it says received 0 and given 2. I've actually, see, that's weird because that doesn't show on my side.
Oh, maybe because you're logged in. Because I know mine shows some, but I don't know if they show publicly like that. But yeah, I've got 7 received and given 18.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. But just because you write a recommendation for someone doesn't mean it automatically shows up. So the process is you can click on this ask for a recommendation at the top right there. You can and then you send it to a connection. So just start typing in my name. There you go. And then it'll give you another drop down that says what, that you want to ask. And so what you would, it'll connect it to a job. And then you put in there something like, "Hi, Kitty. I've really enjoyed working with you these past 6 years. Would you mind uh, uh, recommending me for these particular skills?" Something like that. You always want to personalize that, not just send this default message of, "Can you write me a recommendation?" You do want to say something.
And I would suggest including some specifics of what you'd like them to talk about. I think that's one of the hardest things about writing reviews, recommendations, testimonials is this blank page. And you're like, well, what do I say? So giving some direction on that. And because the flip side of the coin is if you just give them a blank page, sometimes people will talk about things that are not necessarily what you were hoping they would say either. So one, it can be enlightening, sort of understanding how people view your work. But two, if you want them to really talk about, again, to reinforce those skills and keywords that you've really pushed in the other parts of your profile, maybe specifically mention, can you talk about the project management work we did when I was at this, or how I managed my team doing, XYZ projects. So be a little bit more specific and you'll get back more what you're expecting as well.
Exactly. And you can just make it a sentence or two. That's all you need. And whatever they send back doesn't have to be long either. You just really want them to hit on those particular skills or talk about a particular project, that type of thing. And again, it's not going to automatically post. So once whatever they write comes back to you, this is all through LinkedIn, then you have to approve it, or you can suggest some changes. And then you see ask for revision, that type of thing. Okay, so this is where evidently mine's on hide for some reason, so I'll have to go in there and change that. I was unaware of that. And then it's not going to show until you actually click on that. So that's another thing, is that I've written reviews for people and they haven't known to go in and click on the show part, so it doesn't show on there. So it's not doing anyone any good because it's not showing anything. So just keep in mind that there's just a couple of steps. Nothing is difficult at all, and it's pretty intuitive as far as what LinkedIn gives you as options. And then, of course, always save. Just remember that. It's easy to forget, especially if you're in there making a lot of changes. It's easy to forget not to click on that save.
So let's go on to this accomplishments section here.
Okay, so in the accomplishments section, there are several options for you to choose from. I believe I probably have just about all of them because I can fit something, even if it's minor, in each of these sections. So the honors and awards, any kind of, if you click on the drop down, and it'll give you more information on each of those awards. So anytime that you were cited for or honored for something, you can include that information as well as some additional information about the particular award. And that just gives people an idea of, okay, she's done this or that, or hey, I was also a nominee for that award, so that's another way we can connect, that type of thing. Those things are important to include.
Yep.
The organizations, obviously, you're not going to want to include your Costco or AAA membership here, please.
You say
But any
obviously, but I don't know that that would be obvious to everybody. So yeah.
That's why I always tell my clients, because sometimes I see stuff in there and I'm like, no, I'd rather see it blank than you put in AAA. So you do want to put in there, unless you were like the president of AAA or something like that, you're going to want to include any kind of professional organizations that you're a part of, even if you're not a driving member and a driving force in it or a founder. Even if you're just a member, you should include that information.
Well, I think for professional organizations, it's important to include that you're a member, because it shows that you're keeping up to date with what's happening in your industry at the very least. So even if you're not in a leadership role, that you're doing that professional development, staying on top of current trends. I don't think there's an industry that exists, or maybe there's a few out there, where the information's not constantly changing. We're in this very much new information time. And so I think it's important to show how you're staying up to date with what's happening in your industry.
Exactly. Now, publications isn't necessarily going to be for everybody, but because I'm a writer, I have multiple things that have been published, so I include that information there. But as far as certifications, a lot of people have professional certifications, so they might be, I see a lot of computer talk, so excuse me if I don't remember those names, like Sigma 6 or something. I don't even remember all the names, but this is a great place for that part. Now, the two certifications I've chosen to include have to do with my volunteer work, but because my volunteer work is very important to me and who I am as a person, I've included that because I had to pretty much do a lot of work to get certified in these things. So to me, it's important. So I've included it. And again, you don't know what is going to be a talking point.
Yep.
As far as languages, most people leave that out, and I don't think that that's a good idea. If you want to click on that down arrow for that one, it shows you the level of proficiency for each of these languages. So ASL is not going to get me a job. Speaking American Sign Language is not necessarily going to have me be hired for somebody to write something, but you never know. But because I do know some ASL, I've chosen to include it. But as far as English, while it is assumed for the most part that you speak English, if you have a LinkedIn profile that is in English, you still want to include your full proficiency level. But a lot of people speak Spanish or French or some other language, and LinkedIn gives you the option of choosing a different language and the level of proficiency for each. And that's a really important part, again, of showing that you are not just an individual who comes and is a bean counter or does only one single thing, at their job, but they have these other aspects to their personality.
A diverse skill set, and we live in a global economy, so I don't think it hurts. And LinkedIn definitely, because I see connections from all over the place, definitely is a place where it doesn't hurt to showcase if you do have those other skills in other languages.
Absolutely, yes. Now, this is an interesting section with the interests. So if you want to click on the See All, because it just gives the top, some of the top things, but there are 4 different sections in this particular section, and obviously the influencers. This is the section I usually tell people to take the most time with when they want to fill out, because you don't want to necessarily connect with or follow people who you don't have a true interest in for some reason, because first of all their information, anytime they post something from their company page, that's going to show up in your news feed. So if you're really not interested, then you're going to feel like it's spam kind of thing. But also if you have an interest in any of these types of things, you can follow. So what you would do is you would go to, in this instance, you would go to Shane Snow's page, and you would just click on the button that says follow. Now I'm already following him, so it'll show. Of course, Jasmine's doing it from her side, so it won't show following. But if I were to go to it from mine, it would show following. So that's just all you have to do, is go to a company page or go to a person's page. And if there is a follow button and you're interested in following them, then that's all you have to do.
You just hit the plus sign here, Kitty, and that'll add them. So you
Right. That'll add them to you because you're still looking at mine. Right.
yeah, so that's one way. If you've got somebody who you know, who you follow, who you think's got great information, you might look and see who they're following, and that could be a good way to identify influencers that might provide helpful information for you.
And it's going to be the similar type of thing with companies at the top there, that next tab. For whatever reason, you could be following them. So I happen for Salesforce, just as an instance, I saw a 60 Minutes episode a month or so ago, and I was really, really impressed with the company owner or founder, his diversity, his dedication to making sure that he had a diverse workforce. And I immediately went and started following him. I also sent him a LinkedIn connection request, which he has not yet accepted, but that is also how you would think about how to connect with people, not just not just following their companies. Now, let's do schools next and save groups for last. So schools is a similar situation. What I see almost exclusively is that people choose the schools, they choose to follow the schools that they attended only. And what you might want to think about are other schools that perhaps put out articles. Maybe you're always reading a really great article put out by Harvard or MIT or any number of schools, and you want to read more about whatever they publish. So you can go and see, as long as they have a LinkedIn company page or school page, then you can click on that follow button. So for Grand Canyon University, for instance, I did not attend there, but I did teach a class there. University of Arizona, I have a daughter who just graduated, but this University of the Witwatersrand, that they actually had a documentary about anthropology, and I was so enthralled by that documentary that I follow the school. So now I get all these great updates about a topic, a subject that I really am passionate about. And it's such interesting stuff. And I sent connection requests to every single one of the scientists who were in that documentary as well. But that's because I'm a nerd. So just think about all those different colleges and universities that you can connect with or follow, just to not just be following the schools that you attended. Now, groups are groups are a little bit different in that, first of all, LinkedIn will eventually, once you have your profile a little bit more filled out, they will actually suggest some groups to you, but you can also search for some groups as well. And then this is also where it comes in, where we've kind of alluded during this whole process about you never know what's going to connect with someone. So because I have ASL, there's probably some ASL groups. Because I volunteer with the Arizona State parks, there are groups for just about every kind of company or person that you might think about. So there's my high school, actually, that you just passed. So I don't have my high school listed in my education. Go up just a little bit more there. And you can see there's only 66 members. It was a really tiny school back in Pennsylvania, but I happen to have found the group, so I'm a member of the group. So I didn't have to actually list them on my education part of my LinkedIn profile, but I did find a group. So that again is where you can find all these different kinds of things. Now, once you're accepted as a member, because some people, just all you have to do is join it, but also sometimes you have to be approved depending on the group. You should participate in those groups. And so you should either start discussions or at least start out by participating in discussions. All those kinds of things I tell my clients kind of stir up the silt a little bit in the back part of your LinkedIn profile. And those things get you noticed as well.
And that's before we go too far, I will say, because we're running a little long on this video, that probably would be I would think would be a separate training that we could do specifically on groups, because that is one of the, once you get your profile in place, that's probably one of the best tools to really leverage your time on LinkedIn and visibility. And so that's something, if there's anything you want to add to the overview, Kitty, go ahead. But I would say certainly stay tuned, because that's really a whole separate training on how to use groups in depth.
I agree. Right. So just keep in mind that this entire section of the interests are something that's a little bit more personal. So it definitely takes more time for the whole section, but obviously for groups, I would take the most time. Yep.
Perfect. And they don't, one note is you really don't have any control of how they show up in this interest section. LinkedIn chooses those at random. We've been asked that question, so do be somewhat strategic in what you're choosing, what you follow for under those interests, because you never know what's going to show up here. And so you wouldn't, if there's something you don't want to show in your professional life, you may not want to add that as an interest on LinkedIn.
That includes political interest, because there are people who are running for office who have LinkedIn pages. So you may choose not to follow them for whatever reason, even if you vote for them. So think about that too.
Well, I think that covers the LinkedIn profile in quite a bit of depth. We do offer a service where we will review your profile in depth and help you fill in those sections. So that's something, if you do decide you need professional help, there are absolutely ways that you can get that out there. And Kitty, why don't you talk a little bit for people in Phoenix about Career Connectors, because that's a free resource that's available for LinkedIn as well, right?
Right. That's a really great organization that helps underemployed and unemployed people find jobs, or just people who are looking to change their career. And there are 4 different venues that we have across the valley: Gilbert, in Scottsdale, Phoenix, and also now in Glendale. So once a week, there's a meeting at one of those locations, and you can go to careerconnectors.org or look on my profile down below in the volunteer section for the link to that website. But they have lots of resources, including on how to improve your LinkedIn profile. So when you're at the website, you can just look for more information there, not just about LinkedIn, but about expanding your career and your career choices, those kinds of things. Resume help is there as well.
Well, thank you so much, Kitty. I hope everybody has found this helpful. We'll include some notes and links with this video, so any of the resources we've mentioned to make them more accessible. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.